Sourena's disability isn't his fault, right? But finding a way to achieve his goals anyway, that's his responsibility. And we all see this in our own lives. There are certain things that happen, certain circumstances, and they're not our fault, but hey, if we make them our responsibility and we take ownership of those, that's the first crucial step to achieving amazing things. These videos are a collaboration. Sourena, who has cerebral palsy, develops the written material, and I present it on camera.
I have to live with that every day.
He has to live with that every day.
But that takes to give up. That you do it to higher the questions what am I responsible for? I'm grateful for asking that question.
And I'll answer that question for you in the video, but as a little teaser, basically, things are not your fault, but they are your responsibility. And if you truly want to accomplish your goals and be successful, you've got to have that sort of mindset. Because once you take responsibility for these things, even if they suck, right? Like having cerebral palsy sucks, Sourena will tell you, once you make it your responsibility, you take ownership, and that's one of the first keys to being successful.
Do you agree?
I'll take it away. Sourena has cerebral palsy. It keeps him bound in a wheelchair. He requires help with most of his daily activities. He comes with a severe speech impediment, right? And it was all caused by a doctor's negligence at his birth. How sucky is that? Nothing was Sourena's fault, right? It was a doctor that was negligent, and it led to all his difficulties that Sourena has to deal with on an ongoing basis in his life. But by the end of this video, we're going to share Sourena's mindset shift that separates what happened to you from what you do about it, right? Whatever your disability is. The reality he didn't choose. Sourena didn't choose to have cerebral palsy. None of this was his fault, right? The wheelchair, the daily help, the speech impediment, all the things he has to deal with, zero was his fault. And he deals with this every minute of every single day, right? Sourena watches able-bodied people complete tasks in seconds that take him 10 times the amount of time and effort, right? And by the way, tons of more planning, right? Again, Sourena's disability is not his fault, but it is his responsibility. Sourena's rules in practice. Sourena's rules. His first and probably most important rule when it comes to this topic is it's his responsibility to set goals and go after them, right? It's just that simple. Set them and do anything it takes to accomplish them. It's his responsibility, his rule in practice, to communicate what he needs, because that's the only way he's going to be able to go after his goals. One of his other rules and practices is to build joy and satisfaction in his life intentionally, on purpose, right? Another one is to be a great husband and to give his sons the lessons they need from a father. Years of wishing it away. There were years where Sourena just wished his disability would go away. By the way, to be fair too, Sourena always wishes he didn't have it. There's not one point in time where he's like, I am so glad I have this. He just understands that's the reality and has learned to deal with that. But there were times where he really focused on the wishing it away part, right? Replaying the what ifs. What if the doctor wasn't negligent? What if this never happened? What would life look like, right? And a lot of us do that with all of our hard circumstances. What if? What if this didn't happen? I wish it wasn't this way. So we all do that. But the breaking news, those wishes never got Sourena anywhere, right? What really did work for Sourena was separating reality and his reaction to that reality. Reality versus your reaction. Reality is everything you can't change. The stuff that's genuinely out of your control. And when you look around in your own life, right, you'll see those things. Certain things are just what they are, right? And you have to accept and take ownership of those things. But the one thing that you can always control is your reaction to that reality. Again, with Sourena's disability, right? That's just the reality. There's nothing he can do about that. But he can control how he decides to deal with that handicap, right? And that's what's made him so successful, right? You can't control other people. You can't control politics. You can't control the economy, the weather, even human nature. And some days you can barely control your own emotions, right? That's not a personal failing. That's just a human condition, right? But the tendency to look for someone or something to blame when life gets hard, it's completely normal. Unfortunately, it's just not super helpful, right? But it is normal. Responsibility doesn't mean you caused any of those circumstances. It means you're just the one who has to address it. And there's a power that comes with that. It's not your fault, but it's still yours. As Sorena's been talking again, the disability is not his fault, but it's still his, right? It may not be your fault that maybe you grew up in a low-income household or didn't have the most supportive family, or maybe you wasted years in a relationship that you shouldn't have been in, or had a business partner walk away and leave you in a hard spot with your business, right? Those aren't your fault necessarily, but they're yours. They're there. That's the reality, right? No matter what's happened, nothing makes any of that less yours. Satisfaction isn't about the ideal situation. Satisfaction and success are never about finding, an ideal situation. We've all been in those spots in our lives where we're waiting for the right time to do something, and that rarely happens. The right time to move, the right time to buy a home, the right time to start a family, the right time to launch this new business idea, right? The right time to start taking care of your health. We wait for this right time, this mythical right time that rarely happens, right? It's about accepting the situation you're in and making the most out of that situation, right? Dealing with that situation. Because reaching a goal starts with taking an honest stock of where you are and where you need to go. Accept the past, don't dwell in it, and then move forward. The path of least resistance. Sourena will tell you that your mind always defaults to the path of least resistance. If it's a tight job market, the path of least resistance is to complain about it. Not try to get creative and network harder and build new skills, right? If you've got a rocky relationship or a rocky marriage, it's so much easier to just nag about your spouse and vent to friends rather than have honest and open conversations and work on that relationship. Or, hey, your clothes don't fit. It's much easier to buy a bigger size or blame your age, blame your metabolism, or chase a fad diet, right? As opposed to actually making real sustainable changes to your lifestyle or getting a trainer and putting in the work, right? The brain always wants us to take that path of least resistance because it takes the most energy, and the human mind at the most simple level loves stability and comfort, even if it's not where we want to be. But the second path, as we saw when I gave those examples, is always harder, right? It takes more effort, intentionality. You really got to put some emotion into it, right? So we picked the first one because it's easier, and that's what our brain tells us to do, because remember, the brain can be your worst enemy. But that hands you kind of a hollow feeling, right? You don't make any progress, and you really don't get anywhere. The satisfaction of doing it anyway. There have been long stretches, as I mentioned before, in Sorena's life where he didn't want to take responsibility for his life at all. It'd be a little sad, a little depressed, not inspired, not motivated. So those stretches are normal, and they happened. But every time he chose to take the path anyway, he ended up feeling better and happier for it. Even though it was more challenging, even though it was more difficult, always better off when you take that harder path, right? There's a real satisfaction in succeeding in spite of your circumstances, right? One that the easy path will never give you. That doesn't move you forward. That doesn't propel you to your goals. But think about that for one moment in your own life. Think about a situation where you had some success. Then think about a situation where the deck was seemingly stacked against you and there were some real challenges, but you still pushed through and you made it. That is the best feeling of success, right? Because no matter how far something is out of your control, how you respond to it is always your responsibility. That's the mindset that you need to be successful. So remember, reality is what happened. Responsibility is what you do about that. And that distinction is the whole mindset necessary for success. So here's Sorena's challenge to you. Pick one thing in your life that you've currently been blaming outside circumstances on or making excuses for instead of owning. And then this week, take one, just one, small action towards it. Not because it's unfair, but because it's yours. If you enjoyed this video and you found it helpful, and I'm sure that you did, make sure you like it, share it, and most importantly, subscribe to this channel.